Hi there, let's crochet Bruno. First, grab your set and remove the lid. I'll actually use it to store the items I won't need. Here you've got the care instructions, along with the yarn. Set the smaller yarn skein aside for the moment. You'll need the hook and the brown yarn. In this little bag, you'll also find the stitch markers. You'll need those too. Set the stuffing aside. Now take the yarn, remove the label, and locate the yarn tail. Place the yarn inside the tin. This way the yarn will stay clean and unravel smoothly. It will also help you control the tension in the yarn. Okay, let's begin with the magic ring. I'll demonstrate a hands-only method, although there are plenty methods using a hook. To start off, take the yarn holding the yarn tail with your non-dominant hand and the working yarn with your dominant hand. Place the working yarn over the tail and pinch where they intersect. Now pull the working yarn out of the loop that you've just created and give this new loop a twist to form a cross at the base. Then pull the working yarn through this loop, tightening it until the knot is snug but not too tight. To test the magic ring, pull on the yarn tail, and if your ring tightens up, you've got it right. Ensure that the ring is not too big. This will make it easier to crochet into it. Now grab your hook and insert it into this large loop. To adjust the loop to the size of the hook, pull on the working yarn. The loop should be just the size of the tip of the hook so that it is easy to slide the hook through. To hold your yarn, turn your palm face up and position the yarn on your pinky and ring fingers. Fold the fingers, passing the yarn behind and over the middle finger and the pointer. Keep the magic ring on the middle finger and secure the ring with your thumb, leaving space for the hook. Maintain tension in both the working yarn and the ring. In row 1, let's make 6 single stitches. Insert your hook into the ring under both of these strands and grab the working yarn from underneath. Pull the hook out of the ring, forming another loop on the hook that's about the same size as the previous one. Yarn over again, and this time twist the tip of the hook downwards and pull the working yarn through both loops on the hook. Now you've made your first single stitch. We got 5 more to do. Check the size of the loop on the hook and continue adding the stitches. Put your hook through the ring and grab the working yarn from underneath. Pull the hook out and yarn over again. Twist the tip of the hook and pull the working yarn through both loops on the hook. Repeat these steps to create 4 more single stitches. Maintain tension in both the working yarn and the ring in order to make it easier to crochet. Keep an eye on the size of the loop on the hook and the loops you're picking up. This way your stitches will be even in size. Once you're done with all 6 stitches, pull on the hook to make a larger loop. This will save our last stitch from falling apart. Here you can see we've got our 6 stitches all lined up. Each stitch has the shape of a V. The largest loop you pulled out with the hook is not considered a stitch. Now let's tighten the magic ring. Get the yarn tail out and pinch the last stitch in the ring. Pull on the yarn tail so that the ring tightens, but not all the way. Count the stitches by the V's. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now find the second and the third stitch again and place a stitch marker into each one of those. Simply slide the stitch marker under both bars of the V. This is going to help you identify the stitches to put your hook through in round 2. and ensure you're not using the very first V at all. Here is our row 1 with 6 single stitches. In round 2, we are going to have to make 6 increases. An increase is typically 2 single stitches made in the same stitch of the previous round. Increases are used to shape our project, and in our case, we need to start widening our circle to shape the head. Let's take a closer look at the formulas in crochet. SC means single crochet stitch. In row 1, you make 6 single stitches. In row 2, INC means increase. You make 6 increases and each increase is 2 stitches. So 6 times 2 equals 12 stitches for row 2. The number in the brackets tells you how many stitches you will have by the end of the row. The formulas in row 1 and row 2 are relatively simple. However, more complex formulas exist. For example, let's look at row 3. The formula for row 3 reveals numbers within square brackets multiplied by another number, and the final number in the brackets indicates the stitches you should have at the end of the row. What's inside the brackets represents a sequence, which in this case is a single stitch followed by an increase. The sequence is then multiplied by 6, meaning you repeat this sequence 6 times to complete the row. As a result, you will get 18 stitches in that row. Get your yarn in working position, and in row 2 we need to make 6 increases. Put your hook under the first stitch, the one that's not marked. Make sure you have 3 loops on your hook. Now yarn over and pick up a loop. Yarn over again and pull the working yarn through both loops on the hook. This completes the first stitch of the second round. Mark the stitch with a stitch marker to indicate the starting point. Now let's proceed with the increase. Reinsert the hook into the same stitch where the first single crochet was made. Then create another single crochet in that same stitch. Always ensure that the loop you're picking up is of the same size as the loop on the hook. That completes our first increase. Now let's move on to the second stitch and work our second increase. Remove the stitch marker and put your hook under the V of the second stitch. Make a single crochet stitch. Remember to twist the tip of the hook to secure the yarn. Reinsert the hook into the same stitch and work another single stitch. Now that the second increase is complete, let's create the third one into the third stitch. Remove the stitch marker and insert your hook under the V of the third stitch. Work 2 single stitches into this stitch. Now we have completed 3 increases and have 3 more to do. Once you're done with row 2, pull out the hook and tighten up the ring. Count the stitches starting with the marker. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Then pinch your project and pull on the yarn tail to ensure that the ring center is nice and tight. In row 3, follow a simple pattern of a single stitch followed by an increase. Remove the stitch marker and make your first single crochet into the first stitch of the previous row. Once you're done with the first stitch, mark it with a stitch marker and move on to making an increase. Locate the next stitch and put your hook through it. Create a single crochet, then reinsert the hook back into the stitch and create another single crochet. This completes our increase. Repeat this sequence 5 more times. By the end of the row, you should have 18 stitches. Once you're done, pull out the hook and count the stitches starting with the stitch marker. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. Identify the right side of your crochet project by the presence of only vertical bars. The wrong side will feature both vertical and horizontal bars, forming a distinct texture. You always want to hold your project with the right side facing you. When counting the stitches on the right side of your project, begin by locating the magic ring and the 6 single stitches in row 1. Next, you'll notice that the second row starts with a bump. Directly under this bump is the first stitch of the second round. The stitch corresponds to the hole under the V, similar to the hole under this V, but is the first stitch of the second round. We made an increase in this stitch, so you'll find that 2 posts trace back into this hole. And as you follow along the round, you'll encounter 5 more instances where 2 posts trace back into the same hole, indicating the 6 increases. The first stitch of the third round is a single stitch, so there's just 1 post tracing back into that hole. In the second stitch, you'll find that 2 posts are tracing back into that hole. This is the increase that we've made. Then again, a single stitch and an increase. A single stitch and an increase. By examining the right side of your project, you can accurately count the stitches. This method is essential for identifying any errors. If you discover that you have too few or too many stitches in a row, first identify the mistake by counting the posts. Then pinch the last correct stitch to keep it secure and carefully unravel all the stitches beyond it. Next, reinsert the hook into the small loop just above the stitch you've saved and proceed to complete the round correctly. In row 4, follow a pattern of 2 single stitches followed by an increase. Repeat this pattern 6 times. By the end of the round, you should have 24 stitches. Start by making the first single stitch and mark it with a stitch marker. Then follow along, creating another single stitch, and in the next stitch, crochet an increase. Repeat this sequence 5 more times. At this point, your piece may begin to curve inward. Simply adjust it by turning it outwards to ensure that the right side is facing you and the wrong side stays hidden inside the piece. And once you're done, count the stitches to ensure you have 24. In round 5, follow a sequence of 3 single stitches followed by an increase. Repeat this sequence 6 times. By the end of the round, you should have 30 stitches. In round 6, follow a sequence of 4 single stitches followed by an increase. Repeat this sequence 6 times. By the end of the round, you should have 36 stitches. Remember to keep marking off the first stitch of every round. Count the stitches before moving forward. You should have 36. In rounds 7 through 10, create 36 single stitches for each round. To count the rows, start by locating the magic ring with the 6 single stitches. The bump indicates the starting point of the second round. The second round ends once it reaches the bump. The stitch above the bump is the first stitch of the third round. When crocheting in continuous rounds, the last stitch of the round will appear to be 1 row higher than the first stitch of the same round. Counting the rows on either side will give you the same number of rounds. So this is round 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. In round 11, crochet 4 single stitches followed by a decrease. By the end of the round, you should have 30 stitches. Start by making the first single crochet stitch into the first stitch of the previous round, and of course, mark it off as the beginning of the round. Make 3 more single stitches. A decrease is essentially the reverse of an increase, where 2 stitches are combined into one. This effectively reduces the total number of the stitches in the row. Each stitch has a back loop and a front loop. You want to insert your hook only under the front loop. Now find the next full stitch and insert your hook under the front loop of that stitch. Ensure that the back loops remain untouched. Then yarn over and bring the hook together with the yarn through both of those front loops. You now should have 2 loops on the hook. Yarn over again and complete the stitch by pulling the hook with the yarn through both loops on the hook. Find the next full stitch and insert your hook under the whole stitch. Repeat the sequence of 4 single stitches followed by a decrease 5 more times, and by the end of the round you should have 30 stitches. Once you're done with the decrease, count the number of stitches. You should have exactly 30. In row 12, follow a pattern of 3 single stitches followed by a decrease. Repeat this pattern 6 times. By the end of the round, you should have 24 stitches. Before we move on to row 13, we need to put in the eyes. The eyes come with a pad that makes them shine, as well as the backing that you use to lock the eye in place. Before we start putting the eyes in, let's figure out where to put them. Make sure that the bump of the second row is turned to the side. Begin by counting the rows. Identify the 7th and the 8th rows. The eyes will be placed between them. Select a hole in this area and insert your hook to loosen it. Then grab a stitch marker and put it as a placeholder for the first eye. Double check to make sure that you've got the stitch marker exactly between rows 7 and 8. To find the place for the second eye, count 5 holes to the side. Insert your hook into the 5th hole and widen it. Then grab another stitch marker and place it in this hole. Once you're done, you should have 5 posts between the stitch markers. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now replace one of the stitch markers with an actual eye. You can widen the hole using the stitch marker so that the eye goes in easily. Now turn your work inside out and grab the backing. Place the backing right onto the post of the eye and ensure that it clicks in. This way the eye will be fitted securely and will not come undone when you stuff the toy. Now replace the second stitch marker with the second eye. To triple check that the eyes are fitted correctly, check how many stitches there are between the eyes. There should be only 2 stitches visible. All the rest of the stitches are hidden under the eyes. In round 13, follow a sequence of 2 single stitches followed by a decrease. Repeat this pattern 6 times. By the end of the round, you should have 18 stitches. Once you've completed the round, count the stitches to ensure you have exactly 18. Now let's start stuffing the head. Grab some stuffing and spread it gently with your fingers so that there are no lumps. Insert the yarn tail inside the head and start putting the stuffing in. You only need to half fill the head to avoid the stuffing getting in the way during the next rounds of crocheting. Gradually, we will add more stuffing as we go. Make sure to put the stuffing in neatly so none of it is sticking out. In round 14, follow a sequence of a single stitch followed by a decrease. Repeat the sequence 6 times, and by the end of the round you should have 12 stitches. Use your middle finger to separate the fabric from the stuffing. This way your hook will not be catching onto the stuffing. Count the stitches, you should have 12. In round 15, the sequence to follow is a single stitch followed by an increase. Repeat the sequence 6 times. By the end of the round, you should have 18 stitches. In round 16, crochet a total of 18 single stitches. In round 17, follow a sequence of 2 single stitches followed by an increase. Repeat this sequence 6 times. By the end of the round, you should have 24 stitches. Count the stitches to ensure you have exactly 24. In round 18, crochet exactly 24 single stitches. In round 19, follow a sequence of 3 single stitches followed by an increase. Repeat this sequence 6 times. By the end of the round, you should have 30 stitches. Count the stitches before moving forward. You should have 30. In round 20, crochet 30 single stitches. In round 21, follow a sequence of 3 single stitches followed by a decrease. Repeat this sequence 6 times. By the end of the round, you should have 24 stitches. In round 22, follow a sequence of 2 single stitches followed by a decrease. Repeat this sequence 6 times. By the end of the round, you should have 18 stitches. You're very close to completing the body, so now it's time to fully stuff it. Add the stuffing in small pieces and distribute it evenly. In round 23, follow a sequence of a single stitch followed by a decrease. Repeat the sequence 6 times. By the end of the round, you should have 12 stitches. In round 24, crochet 6 decreases. You should have only 6 stitches left by the end of this round. Once you're done and you've got 6 stitches in the row, cut off the working yarn, leaving a yarn tail for sewing. The yarn tail should be around 6 inches long. Pull the yarn tail all the way through the last stitch and remove the stitch marker. Now let's fasten off the body. To do that, grab the tapestry needle and thread it with the yarn. Start by inserting the needle into the stitch where the stitch marker was. Guide the needle from the inside to the outside. Ensure that you're only catching the front bar of the stitch. Then pass the needle through every stitch in the same manner. After threading through all of the stitches, pull the yarn tail to tighten the center. Next, insert the needle into the stitch right beneath the yarn tail and bring it out of the opposite side of the body. To hide the yarn tail, insert the needle into a stitch either directly above or below where it came out of. Avoid the creation of horizontal bars on the toy's body. To clean up any stuffing that may have come out on the surface of the plush, insert the needle through any stitch closer to the one that the stuffing came out of, and move the needle back and forth to pull the stuffing back inside the plush. Some of the stuffing will remain on the surface. Just remove it with your fingers. Create another fixing stitch to ensure that the yarn tail is secured. Be careful not to pull the yarn tail too tight, as this can create dents. If a dent does form, gently slide the needle under the affected stitch and nudge it upward to restore its normal shape. Cut the excess yarn and hide the yarn tail inside the body. Begin crocheting the arm with a magic ring. Ensure that your magic ring is not too big and create 6 single stitches for round 1. Count the number of stitches, and if you've got 6, tighten the magic ring and move along with row 2. In round 2, follow a sequence of a single stitch followed by an increase. Repeat the sequence 3 times. By the end of the round, you should have 9 stitches. Count the stitches to ensure you have 9. In round 3, crochet 9 single stitches. At this point, make sure to tighten the magic ring so there is no visible hole in the center. In round 4, follow a sequence of a single stitch followed by a decrease. Repeat this sequence 3 times. By the end of the round, you should have 6 stitches. In round 5, crochet 6 single stitches. To complete the piece, fold it in half. Pinch the edges of the arm together to align 2 pairs of stitches. Insert your hook through the first pair of stitches, yarn over, and make a single crochet stitch. Repeat this for the second pair of stitches. After crocheting both sides together, cut the yarn leaving an 8-inch tail for sewing. Pull the yarn tail completely through the last stitch. Follow the same steps to make the second arm. Start making the leg by creating the magic ring. In round 1, crochet 6 single stitches into the ring. In round 2, crochet 6 increases. By the end of the round, you should have 12 stitches. In round 3, crochet 12 single stitches. In round 4, crochet a single stitch followed by a decrease. Repeat this sequence 4 times. By the end of the round, you should have 8 stitches. At this point, hide the yarn tail inside the leg and add a little bit of stuffing. In round 5, crochet 8 single stitches. To fasten off the leg, pinch both sides together to align 3 pairs of stitches. Insert the hook through the first pair of stitches and create a single stitch. Repeat the same with the other 2 pairs of stitches. After crocheting both sides together, cut an 8-inch yarn tail and pull the yarn tail through the last stitch completely. Repeat these steps to crochet the other leg. To crochet the ear, start with a magic ring. In round 1, crochet 6 single stitches into the magic ring. Once you're done with the 6 stitches, tighten the magic ring and move forward to row 2. Before starting round 2, make a single chain stitch. To do that, simply yarn over and pull the working yarn through the loop on the hook. This is called a chain stitch. Now turn your work around and begin crocheting round 2. In round 2, follow a sequence of a single stitch followed by an increase. Repeat this sequence 3 times. By the end of the round, you should have 9 stitches. To fasten off the ear, make another chain stitch, cut the working yarn leaving an 8-inch yarn tail, and pull this yarn tail all the way through the last stitch. There isn't really a wrong or right side, just ensure that both ears are turned out in the same way. Repeat these steps to crochet the other ear. Start making the belly with a magic ring. In round 1, crochet 6 single stitches into the magic ring. Once you're done with the 6 stitches, tighten the magic ring and move forward to row 2. In round 2, crochet 6 increases. By the end of the round, you should have 12 stitches. At this point, make sure to tighten the magic ring so there is no visible hole in the center. To complete the belly, make an invisible fasten off. To do that, grab the tapestry needle and thread it with a yarn tail. Now skip the next stitch and insert your needle through the following one. Next, insert the needle back into the last stitch made before cutting the yarn. Slide it between the two bars of that stitch. Guide the needle out on the wrong side of the piece. This technique mimics a stitch, so this fasten off method is called invisible. To crochet the tail, start with a magic ring. In round 1, crochet 6 single stitches into the ring. Once you're done with the 6 stitches, tighten the magic ring and move forward to row 2. In round 2, follow a sequence of a single stitch followed by an increase. Repeat the sequence 3 times. By the end of the round, you should have 9 stitches. In round 3, follow a sequence of a single stitch followed by a decrease. Repeat this sequence 3 times. By the end of the round, you should have 6 stitches. Once you are done, cut the yarn, leaving a 10-inch yarn tail. Pull this yarn tail all the way through the last stitch and remove the stitch marker. Hide the yarn tail from the magic ring inside the tail. To complete the tail, make an invisible fasten off. To do that, grab the tapestry needle and thread it with a yarn tail. Now skip the next stitch and insert your needle through the following one. Next, insert the needle back into the last stitch made before cutting the yarn. Slide it between the two bars of that stitch. Guide the needle out on the wrong side of the piece and ensure that the fake stitch is similar in size to the rest of the stitches. Begin crocheting the muzzle with a magic ring. In round 1, crochet 6 single stitches into the ring. Once you're done with the 6 stitches, tighten the magic ring and move forward to row 2. In round 2, follow a sequence of a single stitch followed by an increase. Repeat this sequence 3 times, and by the end of the round you should have 9 stitches. In round 3, crochet 9 single stitches. Perform an invisible fasten off. Now let's add the nose. First, make sure the muzzle is positioned with the bump of the second row facing downwards. Find the middle stitch between rounds 1 and 2. Push the needle through the stitch from back to front, leaving a small yarn tail at the back. To form a triangle for the nose, use a few vertical stitches and one horizontal stitch. Insert the needle into the stitch in the row above and guide it out of the back. Then bring the needle through the adjacent stitch in the same row and guide it through the same stitch between rounds 1 and 2. Lay another vertical stitch alongside of the stitches you already made to cover up the light brown yarn that's showing. Shape the nose using the needle. Then make the horizontal stitch to complete the nose. Insert the needle into the second stitch from top to bottom and make the horizontal stitch. Once you're happy with how the nose looks, remove the needle and tie the yarn tails together twice. Cut the excess yarn. Now let's sew the legs to the body. Position the first leg between rounds 20 and 21. Once you're happy with the position, grab a stitch marker and pin the leg to the body. Turn your project to face you and double check the position of the leg. Then grab the second leg and position it symmetrically to the first one. Make any necessary adjustments and pin the second leg to the body. Turn your project to face you to double check and confirm the position. Grab the tapestry needle and thread it with the yarn tail of the first leg. Now put your needle into the stitch of the body that is directly under the yarn tail. Bring the needle out on the other side of the leg, matching it up with the last stitch of the leg's seam. At this point, you can remove the stitch marker. Insert the needle through the leg from bottom to top. Now insert the needle into the stitch on the body that's directly beneath the yarn tail. Turn the plush towards you to check the position of the leg. Keep checking how the legs fit during the process of sewing. To further secure the legs and maintain them in a sitting position, guide the needle into the stitch on the body that's directly beneath the yarn tail and bring it out on the front of the body. Then put the needle through the leg itself and pull on the yarn to fit the leg closer to the body. Now insert the needle into a stitch on the body that is close to the one the needle exited from, and guide the needle all the way through the body. This way the leg is going to be secured in a seated position. Proceed with the same steps on the other leg. Thread the other yarn tail through the needle. Make any necessary adjustments, and once you're happy, proceed to sew the leg onto the body. Guide the needle through the body, exiting through the stitch that's directly beneath the last stitch on the leg's seam. At this point, you can remove the stitch marker. Now guide the needle through the last stitch on the leg's seam from bottom to top. Turn your project to face you and double check the position of the leg. Pull the yarn to tighten the stitches and insert the needle through the stitch directly beneath the yarn tail. Guide the needle out on the front of the body similarly to the other leg. And stitch through the leg. Gently pull the yarn to tighten the stitch. Then insert the needle into a stitch on the body close to the one the needle exited from, and guide the needle all the way through the body. Leave the yarn tails at the back for now. Now let's sew the arms to the body. Prepare the needle in advance by threading it with the yarn tail of one of the arms. Place the arm against the body between rounds 14 and 17. And once you're happy with the position of the arm, insert the needle through the stitch on the body that is directly beneath the yarn tail. Guide it out of the stitch on the body that aligns with the last stitch of the arm's seam. Pass the needle through the last stitch of the arm seam from back to front. Turn the plush to face you and check the position of the arm. Once you're happy with the position of the arm, insert the needle back into the stitch on the body where it came out. Guide the needle all the way to the back of the body. Check the position of the arm, and if you want it to be secured closer to the body, add an extra stitch. To do this, insert the needle through the adjacent stitch on the back of the body and guide it out in front of the arm. Then sew through the arm itself. Pull the yarn tail to tighten the arm closer to the body. Next, guide the needle inside the body through an adjacent stitch and guide it out at the back of the body again. Tighten the yarn to ensure the arm stays in place, and finally leave the yarn tail at the back of the body. Repeat this process for the second arm. Thread the yarn tail of the second arm through the needle and position the second arm onto the body. Ensure both arms are fitted symmetrically and proceed to sew the arm. Insert the needle through the stitch on the body that is directly beneath the yarn tail. Guide it out of the stitch that aligns with the last stitch on the arm seam. Guide the needle through the last stitch on the arm seam from bottom to top. Then insert the needle back into the stitch on the body where it came out, and guide the needle to the back of the body. Don't forget to add the extra stitch if you've done so with the first arm. Leave the yarn tails at the back for now. Now let's sew the muzzle to the face. Find the spot for the muzzle. It should be one row lower than the eyes, between rows 8 and 11. Hold the muzzle with your thumb and proceed to start sewing. Insert the needle into the stitch on the face that is directly below the stitch on the muzzle where the yarn tail is coming out. Then guide the needle out from the stitch on the face that is directly below the next stitch along the muzzle's rim. Now insert the needle back through the muzzle from bottom to top. Guide the needle through the next stitch on the muzzle's rim from top to bottom and into the stitch of the face directly below the stitch that the needle comes out of. Continue sewing in the same manner, going from top to bottom when sewing through the muzzle into the face, and from bottom to top when sewing through the face into the muzzle. Follow along the round until the muzzle is completely sewn on. Guide the needle out at the back of the head. Now check that the muzzle fits correctly. Now let's sew the belly onto the body. First, place the belly at the center of the body. Use an unthreaded needle to mark the center by pushing it through the middle of the magic ring and into the body. Then remove the belly and thread the yarn tail from the magic ring through the needle. Guide the needle all the way to the back of the body and pull tight to position the belly. Adjust the belly by twisting it until it's in the perfect spot. Next, thread the other yarn tail through the needle. This will keep the belly in place while you sew. Pinch the belly to the body. Start sewing by inserting the needle through the stitch on the body directly beneath the yarn tail. Guide it out of the body right beneath the next stitch on the belly's edge. Insert the needle through the belly's edge from bottom to top and pull the yarn tight to secure it. Push the needle through the belly from top to bottom. Then insert it into the stitch on the body directly beneath the belly's edge. Guide the needle out right beneath the next stitch on the belly's edge. Guide the needle through the belly from bottom to top. Keep sewing in the same manner. Go from bottom to top when entering the belly after the needle comes out of the body, and from top to bottom when going through the belly into the body. This method keeps your stitches invisible. When doing the last stitch, guide the needle through the body and out at the back. Before moving on to sewing the tail and ears, let's hide the yarn tails. First, reposition the yarn tails so they come out of stitches in pairs. If the yarn tail matches the color of the body, you can create a fixing stitch. To do this, thread the needle with the yarn tail and insert the needle through an adjacent stitch in the row below or above. Then guide it out of the stitch where the other yarn tail is located. If the color of the yarn doesn't match the color of the body, thread it through the needle and guide the needle through the same stitch this yarn tail is coming out from. Reposition it to match it up with another yarn tail. Then tie the yarn tails that are coming out of the same stitch together twice. Cut the excess yarn and push the knot inside the body using the tapestry needle. Gently squeeze the body to even out its shape after sewing. This yarn tail can be hidden later on. After we sew on the ears and the tail, we will have a yarn tail to match it up with. Now it's time to sew on the tail. Position the tail in a spot where it will help the plushie sit better. Then sew it in the same way as the muzzle and the belly. Remember to go through the tail's rim from top to bottom when entering the body, and from bottom to top when going through the body into the tail. Once you're done, guide the yarn tail out to the back of the body so it can be hidden later. Now hide the yarn tails from the muzzle and the tail. Now let's sew on the ears. Each ear has 2 yarn tails, one from the magic ring and one from the Fasten Off. Thread the yarn tail from the magic ring through the needle and position the first ear between rounds 2 and 6. Once you find the perfect spot, lay the ear flat on the head and guide the needle with the yarn tail through the stitch directly beneath the yarn tail. Guide the needle out at the back of the head. Now create a fixing stitch. Keep checking the position of the ear. The ear should be fitted between rounds 2 and 6. Next, thread the other yarn tail through the needle. Start sewing the ear in place. Insert the needle into the head below the yarn tail and out at the back of the ear. Keep checking the position of the ear. Ensure that the ear is fitted between rows 2 and 6. Then guide it through the ear from back to front and back into the head, coming out at the back of the ear again. Repeat until the ear is completely sewn on. Once that is done, guide the needle through the entire head and out at the back. Then create a fixing stitch. Repeat the same steps for the other ear. Start with the yarn tail from the magic ring. Position the ear and secure it in place. Then sew the ear in the same manner as the first one. And once that is done, guide the yarn tail out where the other yarn tail is. Tie the yarn tails together twice. Cut off the excess yarn. Hide the knots using the tapestry needle. Clear up any stuffing that has come out. Congratulations, your Bruno is complete.